Okay, welcome back for Chapter 2. So, again, we are working on employment law. And I actually forgot to mention in our last overview, the textbook is New Challenges in the Business Environment, 6th edition by Moran, Employment Law. Alright, so that's where we're going to be, I'll be adding that to my courses when I use references and need scholarly articles and whatnot. I will go back and reference this textbook. So, something I'm going to note out to you guys. Alright, so Chapter 2 is selection. And I'm going to go over the chapter checklist. So, selection process must be non-discriminatory. Identify when an employer's recruitment process may be discriminatory. Distinguish between job-related and discriminatory questions. Understand the importance of a job analysis that defines necessary job qualifications. Appreciate why record keeping is important. Discern when the EEOC may investigate for discrimination. Understand why only criminal convictions related to a particular job should be checked. Understand employers' liability for a negligent hire. And then we move into discrimination in selection. All right. So, Chapter 2 is pretty short, so I'm going to try and blow through it real quick and cover some of the more pertinent topics within the chapter. Alright, discrimination in selection. The purpose of recruitment and selection is to obtain the best possible workers for a business. Discrimination is permissible among candidates based on interpersonal relations, communication skills, training, and education. It is not permissible because of suspect classifications such as race, religion, gender, and national origin. We look into how to legally evaluate an individual. Different selection tools are testing, conducting interviews, writing samples, demonstrations, and role-playing. So, right now, I'm actually being courted for different HR positions, and I'm looking how I can factor in or work in some of my consulting background for some of this. So I'm actually on the other side of it, experiencing being tested, sitting for interviews, writing samples of my work and projects I've worked on, demonstrating my abilities, and some role-playing or scenario-related questions. All right. Selection, advertising, and recruiting is next. The selection process must be free of discrimination. Great care must be taken to ensure that statements, overtures, and advertisements are not suspect. Advertisements cannot use terms such as high school/college student, recent college graduate, boy/girl, or those under 40 need apply. These are examples of possible violations of the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. It's a way basically that they are indirectly stating young people. Exceptions exist if a BFOQ can be shown for religion, gender, etc., etc. So we'll go back into that and look into what a BFOQ is. That's a term we'll have to review. I'm not familiar with it right now at this point, so I'm going to go back and actually find out what that acronym stands for. Should keep a pen up here so I can mark it off. All right, next, employment perspective. Recruiting candidates solely from colleges for a position where a degree is not justifiable necessity is discriminatory. All right, so let me read that again. I might have bungled that. Recruiting candidates solely from colleges for a position where a degree is not a justifiable necessity is discriminatory. That's interesting. Very interesting. I'd gonna look into this too. I'm curious about this. And nobody's gonna know everything. You can't expect to, but I think inquisitive mind is important. When you see something that you're not familiar with or you don't, know, note it, go back to it, and look it up later so you have a point of reference. That's what I'm hoping to do with this here. So next is questioning. Questioning an applicant about his or her religion, national origin, race, marital status, the number of children, and age is discriminatory. You cannot discriminate in association with disabilities under the ADA. They're going to go through this more in Chapter 9 of this book. Uniform guidelines on employee selection procedures. These were enacted in 1978 to provide proper selection process and avoid infringement of Title VII, Equal Employment Opportunity Act, and the Equal Pay Act. All right. Lastly is selection procedure. This encompasses the use of aptitude testing, physical evaluation, educational credentials, employment experience, training programs, probationary terms, resumes, interviews, and application forms to evaluate prospective candidates. This is important. Employment perspective. Investigation and record keeping. Private employers of 100 or more employees must file annual reports with the EEOC. Obligated to keep records relating to methods of selection, compensation, promotion, training, and termination of employees. Discrimination in promotions. Reason some groups are promoted less frequently is in part to discriminatory social factors. Promotions can entail more responsibility, longer hours, travel, etc. You can't discriminate in promotion. If an applicant doesn't meet the qualifications / requirements, you don't have to promote them. Nepotism and promoting from within. Nepotism is the hiring of family members or relatives. Employers should specifically define what constitutes as family members. It's important, especially in small towns where you have public works, local government, etc., etc. You do see nepotism, unfortunately. Next is negligent hiring. Job applicants / resumes can contain false representations made by prospective applicants in order to improve their prospects of being hired. Basically, people rely on their resumes or fluff them and buffer them so much till they are such a farce from what they actually should be representing. Employers must be diligent in confirming the authenticity of information. So, something we want to think about, they made a note. An individual is hired and causes damage / injury to a third party. The employer will be liable. Okay, so that's noteworthy. If you hire somebody and they're not up to snuff or they are not qualified to do the job and they slip through, the employer is liable. And if you notice in a lot of applications, you will see they say that for false statements they will pursue under the fullest extent of the law, because that can put them in a situation where they can get jammed up, and I mean that to say inhibiting your ability to progress and move forward, So it's definitely something to consider. When you're hiring employees and looking for people, you want to vet and vet well. I say it's crucial. One of the most crucial parts is vetting. You should have strong interpersonal skills and be able to talk and read and see verbal and nonverbal signs in people to try and determine if they're the best candidate for the job. All right. Next section is references. References should be consulted for information regarding character, skill, knowledge, and experience of the applicant. Employers should obtain a written release from the applicant, okay. Okay. All right. We're almost at the end here. Bear with me. I find this stuff interesting. I like to know what's going on behind the scenes with management and what they actually. I like to see the extent and limitations of both sides. I like labor relations. I'm interested in union. So for me, it's interesting. But if I get off on a tangent, bear with me. I'm going to swing it back around. I'm good at that. So workplace violence. Violent acts including assaults, rapes, murders must be guarded against by the employer for the safety of workers, the company's reputation, the liability of the company. An employer is liable for torts committed by employees during the scope of their employment. They may also be liable if and background checks. Background checks are essential to ensure info provided by the applicant is true. All right, so I've read through that too fast. I have to apologize again to my viewers. Background checks is a new section. So I want to rewind and backtrack a little bit. An employer is liable for torts committed by employees during the scope of their employment. All right, so the employer is liable for what their employees do, but the employer is also responsible to provide a safe workplace environment for employees. And later on, you'll be seeing my workshop I'm putting together addressing, dealing with, and managing hostile workplace environment. And one of the sections I would like to reference is safety in the workplace. Okay, so now we can move on to background checks. Background checks are essential to ensure info provided by the applicant is true. An employer would be wise to limit the investigation to info that's related to the job and constitutes a business necessity. So they're basically looking at an applicant for core things that stand out to them that relate to what they're doing. So that is what your reference, that's what they're looking at on your resume and your references. And they're going to do their due diligence in those areas where they say or where you state you have work experience. And you should be. So as an employer, you should be checking those areas that are pertinent to what you're specifically going to be needing. And as an employee or potential candidate, you should be making sure you highlight the areas that are related to the business you're applying for. Next, social networking discussion. Okay, so selection process has become a complicated procedure for employers. They can use different methods to evaluate the qualifications of their applicants, but they have to be sure that their methods are not discriminatory. All right, again, this is Employment Law, New Challenges in the Business Environment, 6th edition by Moran. So that concludes our overview of Chapter 2, and we will then move on to Chapter 3 in our next video.